Welcome to another episode of Culture8 Podcast, brought to you by Izini, your trusted partner in building thriving workplace cultures. Here we explore the intricate and dynamic world of organizational culture, uncovering insights and strategies to help leaders and teams foster environments where people and businesses can grow together. Today we're talking with Jessica Hubley, founder of Story. Welcome to the podcast, Jessica. It's an honor to host you today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Please tell us a little about Story and what's exciting happening over here.
Yeah, so Story LLP is an organization that I founded. It is a cooperative between a law firm and a software company. And our mission is to help underestimated humans cooperate to get more of what they deserve. We are starting with lawyers and clients, and we are starting with the use of technology. So at present, the products we offer are for clients tools to serve as your first in-house counsel, including handling your day-to-day legal tasks as a small business, an emerging company, or in some cases as an individual. And that includes finding, managing, quality controlling, and ensuring the efficiency of external specialist lawyers when a human lawyer does need to be involved in a task. For lawyers, that includes business development functions, administrative functions for small firms, and a precedent library. So we use the technology sitting between the lawyers and the clients to help them each use each other's time and resources effectively. What's happening right now is we are preparing to launch a whole new set of offerings. So we've been serving growth startups, getting folks ready to do seed financing, Series A financings, handling a lot of the early stage legal that the founder just doesn't want to deal with. They've been using Google or ChatGPT and getting really bad work products. So our goal has been to try to get them big law quality work product at incredibly low prices, starting around $200 a month. What we're launching soon is a set of services that handle all of the commercial agreements for certain small businesses that are just really common in the ecosystem and that are serving those growth startups. So whose bills are driving some cost for those growth startups. That's software development shops, design agencies, marketing agencies, recruiters, and things like that. So we'll have commercial, like customer and vendor side contracts and end-to-end automated processes to support them.
Fantastic. Seems a lot is happening over there. And I can, based on what you mentioned, I think it's a great place for even consultant organizations to be able to use your product. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, we're trying to get access to quality legal services to all of the kinds of people who couldn't afford it before. Startup founders, lower income individuals, smaller businesses where that hourly rate is just too much to actually engage.
It really is. So
yeah. Well, you're speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So before we take a deep dive into your views about organizational culture, I would like my audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us about your very first job.
So my first job was I was technically a bar back at the Grand Hotel down in Point Clear in Alabama, where I went to high school. So the bar back's job, in theory, is to go get stuff from the kitchen and bring it to the lounge. In practice, I waited tables, I bartended, and I did that. And I think I may have cooked sometimes too. So I was sort of wearing many hats from the beginning. But it was a summer gig so that I could pay for my own car insurance.
Wow, that reminds me of my daughter's position as well. She is about to turn 16 and she's working at an ice cream shop and she's already thinking about how do I pay for insurance? So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so let's take a twist over here in terms of organizational culture. What are the top 3 elements that define your organizational culture and how do these influence your company's success? So when we talk about elements, you can talk about decision-making, leadership styles, your views on stories and myths, your symbols, your logos, etc.
Yeah. So 3 principles. First one is designed by the marginalized for the marginalized. The second is to target system level changes. And the third is to practice humane capitalism by bringing ourselves in full measure to the team, but without exploiting ourselves or one another. So I'll try to take those in order. Designing by the marginalized for the marginalized, we are a majority female team. We have, for most of our history, also been a majority queer team. And we are intentionally trying to make sure that we are interviewing, in some cases, more folks from the less represented communities in tech. So in the past, we've had female CTOs and things like that. And our goal is that the people who are thinking about the little decisions that get made every single day about the product, whether or not, for example, we're going to ask for someone's pronouns when we're setting up their account, that all of those kind of decisions are made by people who have the lived experience of being more marginalized. And I do this because I think that, candidly, the more marginalized you are, the harder any technology, any problem tends to be for you. And so by providing someone with a product or a solution that helps you as a marginalized person solve that problem, someone who has experienced more privilege is likely to find that solution perfectly workable too. This is a process that I developed at my last company, which is called Annie Cannon's, a nonprofit that I co-founded, that was revenue generating, where we taught they teach survivors of human trafficking and gender-based violence to be software programmers and then run a dev shop where they work. So the bulk of our staff there were survivors of trafficking who have experienced basically every kind of marginalization, and in many cases, many, many layers of different kinds of, deep difficulty and marginalization. They did not feel like they were entitled to participate in the design process. They didn't, by default, feel like their voices deserved to be heard, and they didn't speak up. And so we had to be very intentional about helping them do that. Those kind of techniques are something that I've tried to carry forward to Story. And also, try to make sure that we are hiring survivors as much as we possibly can here as well.
Wow.
So should I go to the second?
No, absolutely. Please.
Yeah. So the second one is to target system level changes. I think that the patriarchy has driven a lot of how business is structured, a lot of how businesses are managed, and patriarchy sort of operates from the perspective of there being one winner, despite the fact that sort of decades of economic theory have suggested that cooperation is actually more productive, compromise is actually more productive. And so the idea of kind of having one boss who decides exactly every detail of how everything's going to happen, or one department head, has never really resonated with me. But then kind of on top of that, the legal system itself is one of the most patriarchal structures left in industry, still operating in fundamentally the same way as it did 100 years ago, with technology that's kind of scaling the problems that it has rather than really solving them or really changing the way that industry operates. The introduction of AI, I think a lot of people thought, oh, it's going to make these big law firms cheaper. And somehow they got more expensive. So that system is one. And again, it's the place that we're starting in terms of like where we are targeting cooperation.
Interesting.
That system is one where I feel like, having been in it and done almost every job in that system at this point, is just very fundamentally broken, particularly for folks from historically underestimated backgrounds. And so we try to look at not how we can do something similar to what already exists, whether it's in engineering or legal practice or what have you, but how we should do something to get the best result, and sort of start from like, what about the system needs to change? And then build the system that we want, as opposed to an addendum to the system that already exists. And then my kind of third guiding principle is one of humane capitalism. I do think productivity is valuable in society. I do think that generating profit is a good thing, but there, for me, should be more sustainability as a focus over growth. Growth is nice, but if you're growing at the expense of human well-being, of the natural resources of our of the earth itself and planetary health, that's not actually growth. I think that's just taking, right? That's just moving resources from one place to another. It's not generative. Whereas I think a sustainability model, if you can develop profit within a sustainability model, that is more inherently generative. This concept for me also pushes to eliminate waste, right? Waste is also by nature sort of exploitative. But I also have had, many careers, many jobs in my career, I should say, that I found myself actually, and I should say I don't use the word exploitation lightly, because exploitation in this world is a very severe and serious thing, and I have not experienced much compared to most humans in this world. But I think that everybody who's, for example, running a startup, has a certain tendency to quote unquote exploit themselves because you're, oh, we're going to work 14 hours a day to just get there. And what is that taking from me?
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that a team always has this guiding principle that you are not expected to take more from yourself than you should reasonably give.
I love it.
But you're also not expected to take more from your team than they should.
Right.
So we have an unlimited vacation policy.
Right.
When one person takes 8 weeks of vacation in a year, that's exploiting other people on the team, especially when the other people who are covering for them can't take their own vacations as a result.
Right.
So that's a balance we try to strike. I won't claim that it's easy,
Right.
but it is something that's important. And I think, let's say, a continuous learning process on how we can do that more effectively.
Wow, a lot of amazing, lots of powerful stuff you've said over here. I don't know where do I begin, and I know I appreciate the fact that you asked, like, should I begin? And it makes sense. I wish I had taken that offer, but then I will not take too much time. But I love the fact, the very first point that you made, and then it reminds me of win-win solution for everybody. It's like you're in it to make sure that everybody's voice is important, and they're actually providing that perspective that you probably might not have, and because they're out there with the maximum information. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that was fantastic. System level changes, I always say that as well. In fact, one of the jobs that I quit last was where I realized there's no collaboration and no cooperation. And pretty much I believe very highly in the fact that there needs to be cooperation. Without that, we are not going to succeed. One person cannot just have all the answers. If it's, I don't know if it sounds similar, but in Microsoft, they had this perspective before Satya came on board, that they needed to be know-it-alls, which is what he changed the culture from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls, and cooperation, that not everybody has all the answers, but together we have most of the answers. And yes, in terms of systems that need this, I don't know if it can be related to systemic thinking, that everything is so connected and we have to look at what the results are or impacts are of one individual making those decisions to versus what everybody makes a decision together. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that compromise is one of the most productive forces in the universe. None of us can have perfect information about everything. And one of the challenges of being a startup founder is that you have so much more information than your team about so many things that it's challenging to figure out how to share and how to get input that's valuable. But I do think that one thing I try to do sort of toward this end, right, is to affirmatively give space for people to speak.
Yes.
Running a team meeting at the end of a given topic presentation, I ask a question that I want to ask you. Is there anything, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want, rather than relying on cultural norms that make certain people feel like they have a right to ask a question anytime and other people feel like they don't really have space to ask. One thing that we did at Annie Cannon's that I try to do here at Story as well is to actually ask the people who are quiet to ask me a question.
Yes.
To give me a comment or ask a question. And I find that almost exclusively when you do that, they ask a question that other people have to, and getting the answer is really valuable. So
yes,
I've even done that. I sometimes present to startup communities or accelerator communities or things like that on kind of startup legal 101. And founders are really quiet. They don't know what they don't know. So I'll often just ask everybody in the audience, if it's a small group, can you just ask some question that you've had or some question that you're wondering about, and you get really good discussion out of that. And so I think that is a very valuable thing. I think the constraint on that has to be that the person who's like doing the books can reasonably ask about the software that's generating the numbers that go into the books, but maybe shouldn't necessarily ask about sort of what the product manager chose to do, in setting up the tickets or something like that. So it's helpful for people to know where they can meaningfully contribute, but also helpful for For it to be very open as to how, how someone might contribute if we're not expecting it. Um, and I think I also kind of affirmatively seek out language barriers. I affirmatively seek out folks who are immigrants who are speaking English as a second language, because I think when you have to explain something in a way that continues to simplify the words, you get kind of a better explanation at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's very important for their growth as well. I think that they get to feel valued. One of the biggest important points or interventions that I would always talk to my clients is about, while there is a point where you don't want to make them uncomfortable by always asking them questions, but the point is to help them feel slowly and surely, to help them to understand that their voice matters, and we are actively looking for their opinions, and because their perspective is going to add value to the organization. I think there was something which you mentioned on the other hand, was that the two individuals, the bookkeeper and the product person, maybe, in my opinion, and that's the entire company or people should know about each other's work, not necessarily to interfere, but to really understand their perspective, and um, being in a place where everybody is aware of what the goals are, what they need from each other, and what might help from their perspective. So bookkeeper's perspective might help a product person as well. I don't know. Maybe that's
Yeah,
just
no, I completely agree. I mean, like, last week at our all hands meeting, we went through a table of the next three major kind of milestones in the company's development, and what we were expecting each person to be working on at each of those milestones. And of course, it's an early draft. It's a starting point for a conversation, but without actively collecting and sharing that information, the engineer would have no idea what the chief legal officer is going to do.
right.
And it is relevant, actually. At a high level, what somebody's working on is absolutely relevant to what others do.
Yeah. Fantastic. Um, I wanted to say that I love the word when you said generative. I think it's not used a lot. And then one final thing about was the third point, growth of our people. I wrote a post based on, I get a lot of influence from certain books, and one of them is The Fifth Discipline. That's the systemic thinking. And there was one mention about the ferment in management will continue to exist till we grow our people. And what Kyocera's president and Hanover's president or CEO mentioned was the fact that they need to be able to help. Our leaders' jobs are to improve the people's life, both professionally and spiritually. That's the Kyocera, the Japanese way of thinking. And Hanover's president and CEO what he mentioned was, we need to be able to create environments where our people will be able to realize their self-actualization, go to the higher level rather than just professional growth and stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. Cool. Can you share a quick example of a recent culture initiative and its impact?
Sure. So we've just hired our third engineer, and a quite senior engineer who's been an interim CTO before.
Hmm.
But I've asked the team, while we are this size, that rather than having somebody be the manager and other people be listening to the manager in terms of what to do, that they affirmatively and actively communicate, as a group multiple times a week to decide what the best thing to be doing to achieve the high level objectives that we've supplied, from the business side for them. I expect this to be, that's something I don't think that you could do with 1,000 engineers,
Hmm.
but with three, each person is bringing a different background, skill set, a different level of experience, and a different exposure to different parts of the system. So my suspicion in this, let's say it's an experiment, is that we'll get much better plans out of that architecture in a period where we're small and we need to just move very, very quickly. And a lot of people at this size of a startup just have to do a lot of different things.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that, but I think that's a kind of classic example of a non-hierarchical kind of humane capitalism move.
I like that. I would recommend a book if you're open to it, and it's called Reinventing Organizations, and it talks about exactly this, how individuals are working as a team on a flat hierarchy rather than on a hierarchical level. And I think that's the future of work. That's just my opinion, but that's the way I think about it. And really, the main point is the life experiences that each of these individual brings is so crucial. That would help them to really solve complex problems versus one way of thinking. So that's my views on it. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
What is one major challenge you faced regarding organizational culture, and how did you overcome it?
Uh, so I think the biggest challenge I have right now is that I don't have enough capital to pay people as much as I think they should be paid.
Hmm.
And so what we're doing at the moment is, sort of I got experimenting together, right? We have objectives where if we can meet them in the next couple of months, we can reasonably anticipate. We're building something that people have been screaming for a very long time, and we are challenged by the fact that if you are not currently thinking about spending money on lawyers, it's not something you're likely to decide to do because of anything I say to you, right? You sort
Right.
of have to meet people where they are and when they have a problem. But a lot of people have this problem. So I've asked the team, with significant equity grants, and ownership rights that
Hmm.
go along with it to, uh, you know, each and every one of them is taking less than they could make if they worked at Amazon or
Yeah.
Google, something like that, um, in an effort to actually do something that matters in the world and to get us all to a place where we have the revenue to increase salaries for everyone. I also am currently the equivalent of the lowest paid person at the organization. Of course, I would like a raise too. So
Yeah.
we all are working toward together. But I do think that that's something that means that often, people on the team might have to ask themselves, like, what about my wife, my kids, my family? Is there something else that needs me to make money? I may or may not, I may want to do this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is being open to that reality, and understanding that we have to also plan then for the possibility that people might have to leave to take care of themselves
Yeah.
at any time.
Yeah. That is a very tough situation to be in, and I totally understand that. And thank you for bringing it out, because normally people would say, why are you talking about capital and payment and stuff, and that's not really culture. But in truth, everything that the organization does for external adaptation and internal integration is part of its culture. So thank you for sharing that. And I totally agree. I think I love the solution that you bring in. You're realistic about where they might have to grow if the company is not able to give them that place, but you're also open to the ideas how you could probably help them, even if it's not something that you can help with. You're open to hearing them out. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Um, what is one trend that you see shaping the future of organizational cultures?
Well, I think we have to talk about AI. Um, uh, with every passing week, a new tool is released to do something that a person or a department used to do.
Hmm.
And I think there are two sides to this. On the one hand, I don't envy a 22-year-old computer science graduate right now because they don't add any value over
Hmm.
what AI can do, and in fact can't do as good of a job as quickly. There are some things that no human can do that AI does not need breaks, does not need sleep, it
Yeah.
does not need to be paid more than the license fee. So there are a lot of things that we're able to do with some senior people managing AI tools
Yeah.
that 3 years ago we would have needed 50, 100 people to do. And that's really, really exciting as a startup. It means you can be very disruptive as compared to people who are stuck with all of that existing infrastructure and human beings who need to keep their jobs and who know systems and run systems, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I can certainly understand folks' anxiety about what AI is going to do to the job market, and it is going to drastically change the job market. But I would say that every major technological innovation in the history of the world has done that too. And this one might just do it more and faster, but it's still the case. The flip side of the, let's call it an AI revolution, is that, 5 years ago, a woman with an English degree who had an idea for an enterprise that involves some kind of software had to convince venture capitalists to pay her enough money that she could hire engineers away from places like Google or Meta or Amazon or what have you to actually try out her idea and see if it had legs. And if you are a historically underestimated or underrepresented person, it's extremely difficult to convince someone with money and power that you're worth a shot.
Yeah.
And so it meant that so little venture capital goes to women, so little venture capital goes to minorities. It's a harder road, and everybody charges you like there's almost nothing in my life that somebody doesn't suggest a higher price to for me because I'm a woman if they get the chance to like quote me specifically, right?
Interesting.
But now that same woman can go use one of a few different AI engineer platforms for $20, $50, maybe max $200 a month, and build something with her own human words herself. And yes, you'd use those tools more effectively if you know something about software engineering, certainly, and you know what words to use and tell it to check state and things like that. But the cost of getting a prototype to market and seeing if people will buy it and getting that initial traction that investors tend to require of historically underestimated groups that they do not equally require of more historically represented groups, now that's become a lot easier.
Right.
And so I think there's an opportunity now for a lot more software products that could not have existed in the prior economy to come into existence.
Yeah.
And to be designed by the marginalized for the marginalized, which I'm obviously pretty excited about.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely true. And I do remember there's a whole lot of conversation. Everyone talks about the fact that AI is going to take our job and stuff, and people always also add into the fact that the way to look at it is I think we as humans need to continue, like you said, every revolution brings about changes in the job market, and we as humans should be open-minded and growth-minded about how do we capitalize on it and use this as an augmentation of our creativity. That's probably I'm throwing buzzwords at you right now, or probably the most common conversation that everybody has. But there is some truth to it. We need to use AI to become better. And I always think about books and technology as just our kind of human DNA, and like how DNA is to help you evolve. So this technology is present over here because that's an evolution of humanity as a whole. It's funny you mentioned about, and I think I don't know if I met you at Atlanta AI Week, and I don't know if we talked about the impact of tenure and the use of AI with the tenure. So obviously, like you mentioned, the 22-year-old might not necessarily have a lot of experience and they might not provide value. And at the same time, we have veteran software developers who would probably use AI to the effect. In fact, sometimes even teach AI what it needs to know. And I had read this article about how one company was using AI was the fact that they would use the senior folks or tenured folks to teach AI, and then AI would teach the junior folks, junior software engineers. And I think that was a conversation I had with the CEO over there in Atlanta AI Week as well.
Interesting.
Yep. What is one piece of advice you would give leaders about fostering a positive organizational culture?
Learn to admit when you're wrong. I try to encourage myself and everyone else to acknowledge your mistakes freely, because you can't learn from them unless you admit they exist. And I've seen some of the worst organizational circumstances I think I've ever seen have come from people in power who did something wrong and then did everything in their power to not admit that they had been wrong. It just magnifies the harm, right? So that's my one piece of advice is, but if you hear something suggesting that you might be wrong, take a good look and Imagine if you are, and how you should react. And it doesn't mean you're always wrong. It may mean that somebody else didn't have enough information, but
Mm.
um, even that examination, to say, oh, well, I wasn't necessarily wrong, but I didn't give this other person all the information they needed. I think that can be really valuable in terms of growing culture.
Yeah, and I think it needs a person to have that kind of safe environment, psychologically safe environment, to be able to look at, yes, I think I made a mistake, and also have the opportunity of people within their team to be able to, not about self or holding each other accountable, but to share feedback about, hey, I think you went wrong, and then at the individual level, yes, oh, I accept your feedback and I think it makes sense, and I'm ready to grow as a person, and I look towards fixing that. And of course, this conversation did remind me. I love the perspective that you gave. When you started off, it gave me a reminder of Gary Ridge, where he his way of changing the organizational culture at WD-40 was about celebrating their mistakes, to learn from those mistakes and take their culture to the next level. So that's a good advice. Thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome. So on now to our rapid fire questions. What book do you recommend the most?
In terms of leadership or organizational culture, I think the most powerful book that I've read is Start with Why. And the high level thesis is the first thing that you should be identifying as an organization is why you exist, and that drives what decisions people make through every level of the organization, as well as how you operate. And I thought that was an incredibly valuable book.
Absolutely. Purpose is the most important, the North Star of the organization that will align your people to their purpose as well. Everyone moving forward together. Great. What is one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
I painted that thing behind me. I'm a gallery shown oil painter. Do ceramic arts and drawing and oil painting and things like that, which is kind of the opposite of the lawyer, engineer, analytical side of the brain.
Interesting. Very interesting. I don't know why would you say that, but I think that would be really important, because I suppose that is your meditation space.
Yeah, it's a very different exercise. I mean, I would say that designing a software product has a lot in common with painting, except you are trying to deal with the feelings, impulses, and emotions of others, of your users, as opposed to yourself. So I think the artistic process for me is one that is, sort of inherently and overwhelmingly selfish. I only have to put the things on the canvas or on the, on the pottery wheel or what have you that I feel like putting there, and that's nobody else's decision. And I think that that's very cathartic if you are spending most of your time trying to figure out how to serve other people.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Really cool. How can our listeners connect with you?
So you can visit our website at story.law and drop us a line contact form wise. We are at Story LLP on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I'm happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn, happy to get an email to help@storyllp.com if somebody has some kind of legal issue and they just want some free background information about how it's going to work, the price, the process, the kind of lawyer that will handle it, and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. I will say this was a very powerful and very insightful conversation. It was an honor to host you. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So there you have it, folks. A great, insightful conversation with Jessica Hubley of Story LLP. Thank you.